Hi there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com here with this week's episode of the Market Monday. So we have a lot of things to talk about, a lot of things going on right now. The first of which was the conclusion of the Pro Tour Shadows over Innistrad, where we got to see a very diverse metagame, which meant a lot of prices did increase. We had prices increasing especially from the Cryptolith Rite, Seasons Past, Dark Petition, Languish, and a few others. So my picks weren't pretty much my top three. I think that all of them did slightly go up. Like Worldbreaker, I was very surprised that it made the top 8 with I think there was 3 or 4 of them in Brad Nilsson's deck. Plus, the green-red ramp had quite the showing at the Pro Tour, and it slightly increased, which I thought it being a mythic in a top 8 deck, it should have increased a lot. So let's just look at it in a second. We'll go over the Pro Tour gains and losses, what I think is a good time to get out of cards, and what cards I think still have room to grow in a second here. But first I want to say, let's look at this Muddle the Mixture, a $10 common. So I guess that's your market alert. If you have any of these things lying around, get out of them now. This is Ravnica was an older set, but there's tons of these that are going around. The reason why that Muddle the Mixture has now gone up from about $1 card to a $10 card is because of this U-White Thopters deck, which it can counter an instant or sorcery spell for 2 mana, so it's almost like a negate. So, I mean, in Modern, what doesn't negate hit that Muddle the Mixture hits? I mean, I guess the mana cost is a lot easier for negate over Muddle the Mixture, but the ability to transmute into your Sword of the Meek or your Thopter Foundry, either one of the pieces, is what's making this card incredibly good, and especially the gifts version, because it's very easy to assemble the combo. I think that you can get some other nice little cards in the, let's just check out the list and see what else you can get in the deck. So yeah, the Sword of the Meat, you can get a Talisman of Progress if you need to have any more mana, I guess, but it's really just in here for the Thopter Foundry, and I guess you can get a Snapcaster Mage. Thopter Foundry and Sword of the Meek to transmute into it. In the sideboard, it can also, it's your toolbox transmute. It can go get a Jace, it can go get a Hurgle's Recall, it can get a Disenchanter, Celestial Purge. I'm surprised they don't have a little more of a toolbox shell in here. Cards like Suppression Field, Rest in Peace are both 2 mana. What other cards could they go and grab at the 2 mana slot? But anyway, I think it's just a great little card. Great little tech. I've always thought Transmute was one of those underrated mechanics, and so you might start to see some of these other Transmute cards go up as well. I think I stockpiled in these Muddle the Mixtures. I'll have to go and see how many I have. Usually when I sort bulk, this is one of the cards that any sort of unique ability like Transmute, these are cards that I would set aside and take them out of the what I call true bulk, and so these don't get like repacked, like we do a lot of repacks at our store for new players. They also don't get just set aside and sold in bulk lots, which I've done before, like $5 for $1,000 cards, etc. So these are cards that I have set aside. I hope you did the same with these type of things. I highly suggest going through your commons and uncommons, even for recent sets, and finding unique abilities or unique keywords. And you never know when this is going to be the next Muddle the Mixture. Alrighty, so let's just go over the decks from the Pro Tour. We got to see a white-green tokens take it down, and the Bant Company take second. The Bant Company had a decent showing. I mean, it was by far the most played deck at the Pro Tour. And my pick out of Bant Company to go up was the Dromoka's Command for last week, and we did see a nice little spike. So you got like $1, a little bit over $1 from last week, or well, yeah, about $1 from Dromoka's Command. I think there's a little bit more room for Dromoka's Command to grow, but this is the time that I'm getting out of all Dragons of Tarkir and Origins. So this is going to be the last time these peak. You might see another slight peak after the Pro Tour Eldritch Moon, but we're going to start to see the race of the vendors trying to get out of these cards because rotation is coming sooner than you think. It is, what, September? When rotation for Standard, we just barely had a rotate in, but it's going to be very quick rotation now. So you're going to start to see a lot of these Dragons, Tarkir, and Origins cards, even if they're seeing a ton of play, start to plummet in value. We can go over to Siege Rhino, and I can show you exactly that is the trajectory from. I guess this just always went down. Yeah, so you get to see here, that was the last Pro Tour right before people starting to get starting to get prepared for rotation, and then boom, it just plummet. We saw a little spike again at another little Pro Tour here, but then it just continues to go down. I guess Seadrun is a bad example because it was reprinted in, what's another, like Crackling Doom. There's a good little, because this is a card that started to see a ton of play after the Konza card. Yep, so here's rotation. All of a sudden it becomes a staple, and this card was a staple the entire time after the Jeskai Black deck became one of the #1 decks played in the format. So you can see that it went from 80 cents after rotation to a spike, and even though it continued to see a ton of play, it still went down. So expect a similar trajectory for all of the Origins and Dragons of Tarkir cards. Let's go back to some of the deck lists here. So the white-green tokens, I don't think there was much of a breakout card here in the white-green tokens list. Oath of Nisses are a nice little pickup. These are just a very solid card in a lot of the different decks. Even in Modern, I think this is very playable. Sylvan Advocate went up quite a bit. The Hangerback Walker is still pretty low, but it's a card that I don't like to get into because this was printed, I believe, in the black-green, like, Aristocrats event deck. Yeah, I swear that, yeah, this is a one of. Yeah, that's why it went down. And I am not a fan of Hangerback Walker right now because of all of the exile. I'm going to have to do a video right now of exile versus destroy cards. And Ultimate Price, one of the key destroy cards, actually doesn't kill Hangerback Walker. So you're looking at, like, Grasp of Darkness is like the only card that actually destroys, maybe Languish Radiant Flames. But then we have, like, the Tendrils and Anguish Unmaking and Declaration of Stone and Silk Wrap and so many other cards that just exile the Hangerback Walker, and it's just hard for it to get any sort of value. So I just don't like it in the. It's good, of course, in like a tokens-based deck where they have to answer it, and then if they want to be bringing in a lot of like Anguish Unmaking type exiles, I guess Tendrils does very good, but you can get above the Tendrils. That's just not a good option against this type of deck. So then Dromoka's Command is a 4 of in this deck as well, so I still think Dromoka's Command will go up. I'm very surprised Dromoka's Command didn't go up more than it did. Gideon is in here as a 4 of. Nissa is in here as a 4 of. They both did spike slightly. I think Nissa spiked quite a bit, actually. Nope, actually Nissa stayed flat. Crazy that it won the Pro Tour and stays pretty flat. And there's a few other cards in here that I think have a little bit of room to grow, just depending on how well this deck does. It's just a very solid deck in the metagame because it doesn't really have... There's like Virulent Plague that does very well against it, but you can recover quite easily from Languish or Radiant Flames, and it can go toe-to-toe with the Aristocrat decks as well as the heavy control list as well as Bant, and it clogs the board nicely versus mono white. So I think that this deck is going to be a staple in the metagame for time to come. Speaking of metagame, it's just a very diverse metagame. I think we have a lot of room. I still like some red dragon aggro. I'm going to have to show you a list I've been working on, but Draconic Roar has been extremely good in my testing. With the only problem is we only have Thunderbreak Regent, and then Avaricious Dragon is the one that's another 4/4/4/4, and that card's actually kind of weird in the deck. But so then we saw some white-green or some Bant Company, some Esper Control and Esper Dragons, but the ones that really saw a lot of increase was the black-green Control, the Goggles Ramp, and the black-green Aristocrats deck. A lot of these cards went crazy up, like the Dark Petition. Dark Petition was almost just a dollar rare commander card, and it does actually see some legacy play as they can go get they can tutor up something and actually have the mana to cast their combo piece. So it's really good, yeah, in the Ant. Then the Ad Nauseams, I swear they're running it in, oh yeah, it's called Storm. Yeah, Storm is what they're running it in Dark Petition. But it's now up to $7. I highly suggest that if you have these cards, you get out of them, just because we saw it with Crackling Doom. We're going to see it now with Dark Petition and all these other Origins cards. So get out of these cards immediately. Another card that did spike out of the set was Seasons Past. Of course, you have some time because it is in the brand new set. It went from a $2 Mythic to a $10 Mythic. The card is just value sitting in this deck as there is just a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 converted mana cost cards. You can get back a ton of different cards with late game Seasons Past. It's like a nice little green card draw. For this deck, and this basically this is so similar to a black-blue control shell, but instead of the card draw from blue, it's card draw from green. This one's a heavy black base deck, barely just splashing in the green. The Hissing Quagmire is another card that went insanely up at $6 a piece. This is also starting to see a lot of play in Modern, in both Junk and just the black-green Jund type version in Modern. And it's seeing a ton of play in the various black-green decks in Standard. So I think $6 is probably the right amount for this card. That's what we see the Shambling Vent at. And so I don't know if you need to quite get out of Hissing Quagmires. Llanowar Waste, though, these are going up. It's been reprinted a ton of times. And I think that if this hits like 250, if you have excess of these, you don't need them for decks, and you might as well get your money out of them. Because like I said, they were reprinted twice in a row, and also had some printings beforehand. And yeah, they did go. I think all of like the caves. I think the green or the blue-red is the only one that's the Shivan Reef is the only one that I can see hold like a $3 above price tag, because that card actually does see some play in Modern. The rest don't really see a lot of play. I've seen caves every now and again see play in Modern, but for the most part, unless you're trying to splash like Eldrazi in a Modern deck, which we haven't seen for a while, that colorless is very insignificant, and there's just better options in the format. So one of my picks, Nissa Renewal, did see a bit of a spike, but in hindsight, I probably should have never picked Nissa's Renewal because it is in that event deck. But that's a nice little gain. It might continue to go up a little bit. And then we'll go on to the Goggles. The big breakout card for this deck was the namesake, was the Goggles, which was a $2 Mythic and up to a $15 Mythic. Again, I think it's time to get out of it. It is an Origins card. Languish is another Origins card that I think you should get out of. This had another card that had a nice little bump, was this Fall of the Titans. I was actually testing this in a few other decks just as a surge. This is actually a pretty neat card at instant speed. It's the instant speed that really puts it over the top. It's just one of those things that I never quite gave the time of day, but even in the non-ramp deck, I like this card. So Fall of the Titan, I think, has a lot more room to grow, unless this was in some sort of event deck too, or intro pack. Then that always keeps it down. Chandra saw a ton of play and also did see a spike. This card I'm loving in Scred Red for Modern. I'm going to show you my Scred Red build for Modern. I think it's the best deck in Modern right now, or one of the best decks. I think that you should either play Jund or Scred Red, just because right now in Modern there's still a ton of nonsense. What I mean by nonsense is those combo-based decks. A lot of Storm, a lot of Thopters, a lot of Scapeshift, a lot of Ad Nauseam, and I've seen a lot of Goryo's Vengeance lately, and Infect, all these things that I think Scred and Jund do very well against because of their control aspect. And so Blood Moon has been performing phenomenally well for me. I actually like Scred a ton versus Jund with a Wormcoil Engine and a Chandra. So this Chandra is a 1 of in the deck. I'm thinking about going a 2 of, but a Wormcoil Engine, a Chandra, and the Goblin Dark Dwellers. I've just been eating Jund alive with that deck. Their Scavenging Uses and their Tarmogoyfs are so bad versus the Relic of Progenitus, and then Blood Moon actually hurts them a lot, especially on game number 2 where they have to be proactive and start getting basics instead of their dual lands. It really hinders their ability to get their Liliana off on time. And their Goyfs, again, are so bad. A lot of their cards are so bad versus Scred. Anyway, that's a video for another day. So the card that I'm surprised has not shot up yet is Worldbreaker. Just a little bit of a bump. But a 3 of and a 4 of in a ton of decks, especially top 8. I think Brad Nielsen was one of the highest ranked going in the top 8. I know that he had a ton of camera time with this card, but a lot of the camera time was actually getting this Pyromancer's Goggles ramping into, or copying a bunch of spells and just really controlling the board. Dragonlord of Tarka also saw a bump. It sees play 1 ofs, 2 ofs, 3 ofs in a few of these ramp decks. And yeah, I don't think there's too many cards out of this deck that went up. Yeah, I know Explosive Vegetation went up a ton. I think that Tireless Tracker saw a ton of play in the Bant list and stayed steady at $6.50. I think there was Goldfish did a little bit like the most played card at Pro Tour, but it was just a lot of the Bant cards because Bant was the most played deck by quite a bit. And so it just shows you that only one getting in the top 8 was quite a disappointing. I think the MTG Goldfish did a metagame breakdown. Only 56% of the field actually made it to day 2 that was playing Bant. Now, mind you, you only have to go 4-4 to make it day 2, so you just have to have an even record. So a lot of these Bant decks were either having less than an even record or just barely an even record to squeak by into day 2. All right, so the last one I want to talk about is this Black-Green Aristocrats that was piloted by the Channel Fireball team. Liliana saw a pretty significant spike up from about $16 to up to about $30, so a double in value. I think it's a good time to get out of Liliana's because they will be rotating soon. We also saw the... Yeah, look at the Duskwall Recruiter. This is an uncommon, so check your bulk from drafts. $2.50. This card's insanely good in the format right now, just the value it provides. But we saw Collected Company go up again. I'm not sure how I feel about this card. It was in an event deck, but it sees a ton of play in Modern as well as Standard. Just tons of Modern decks like Elves and these company-based decks. This is just such a Kevin card as well. I brew with this card a ton in Modern, so I won't sell my playsets. I'm going to keep like 2 or 3 playsets just because I usually have them in a Standard or a Modern deck. But if you have excess of these, it might be a good time to get out of Collected Company just to break. This is probably the most it's going to be worth for a while. I could see it holding value, $25 till rotation, and then it drop off a ton at rotation, then climbing back up in the long term. Because the pod type decks are doing quite well. They do decent versus Jund because they're always a top deck away from coming back from getting control from Jund to being in control of Jund. All right, so nothing, and then the Cryptolitherite was the other card, as well as this one also did the Westvale Abbey. This is also starting to see a lot of brewing. People are trying this card a lot in Modern, and even I've seen some Legacy builds with Cryptolitherite. Don't know how well I feel about that, but I think that it does have some merit in Standard. This is a fun card to play around. The Black-Green Aristocrats is going to be a cheaper deck. If you cut out the Lilianas, I mean, this deck is going to be a $275-ish deck, and then you can even cut out the Kalitas, Trader of Get, and you can cut $100 off the deck right there. And then Collected Company could probably be replaced with Evolutionary Leap. I'm not quite sure how I like that, but yeah, this could easily be made for a very, very budget-based deck. There's another $100 off the Collected Company, so it's like $125 for this list if you cut out some of this fat, and you don't need either of these. Kalitas, I think, is one of the more powerful cards in the format. I've been talking to people, and I should have picked up a ton here, of course, but I think this, if any Mythic has the ability to go up above $40, like the next $40 Mythic, I think it's Kalitas, just because of how versatile it is in a number of different decks. Alright, so that's just kind of the Pro Tour overview. I think our picks did okay. None of them went down. The Archangel of Ties, I believe, just like... Didn't it plummet recently just because it did so bad? Well, it's starting to go down, but I saw it. Yes, there we go. Look at these on TCG. Bunch of them at $14. This price is going to plummet. eBay, it's $14, $15 as well. I thought so. It had a horrible showing at the Pro Tour. A lot of the mono whitelist didn't even run it. I've always said that it was bad in the deck. It's a nice little curve topper if you hit it and they have blockers and then they can't block. But I really don't think this is what the deck wants to be doing. Like, what I like instead of Archangel of Ties is Anafenza. I think Anafenza does a lot better for the explosiveness of the deck. Like, if you go first turn 1-drop, second turn Anafenza, and third turn drop like a 2-drop and a 1-drop, you've already got value out of Anafenza. You've bolstered 2 things, and it just provides that additional aggro that I think is better than Archangel of Ties. But anyway, I'll have to do some analysis of certain decks in the future. Mono White Humans got destroyed by all the players playing Languish and Kalitas. But anyway, the last one I want to talk about is now Wizards announced there will be no more Pro Tour Moderns. I am very much against this, and it's just because Modern is my favorite format. If I were to make a Pro Tour, I would want to play Modern, I guess, just because I have a deck that I feel like I'm a good pilot at and I've had a lot of success with in the past. And Standard is okay. Like, it depends on the Standard format. Right now, I love to play Standard. Standard is a very diverse format. There's a lot of... If you have a homebrew deck, you can do successful, which you can't say about the last 2 Standard formats. Homebrews were basically unplayable because of the mono black control when we had the Theros block, and then the Siege Rhino, Siege Rhino mid-range just ate up any, not, weirder comboer synergy, type deck. It was very hard to run anything but the blatantly obvious synergies in the format, and they just wanted the guilds to see play so much that they made a lot of those cards too powerful in my opinion. So if you're looking at like, oh, should I run a 4-drop over Siege Rhino? Absolutely not. You're going to be running Siege Rhino. This format, I think, is a lot different. And we saw that the pros adjusted to beat out Bant and Mono White. And we saw that just the metagame completely shift. My favorite standard of all time would have been Innistrad Return to Ravnica, because each week the metagame would shift. There was never a solved metagame. In fact, I think at the very last week of before it rotated, we were starting to see a lot more innovation with the set. We started to actually see like Desecration Demons start to see play, and Liliana of the Veil started to see play again, and a lot of these other cards that hadn't seen play for a while. And so I'm hoping that this format's going to be very much like that old Innistrad Return to Ravnica format. So anyway, back to the Modern. I'm very disappointed there won't be a Modern Pro Tour. I think this is bad for Modern. A lot of the spikes we saw was after the Pro Tour for Modern, and so it makes me a little bit leery about investing in Modern. Yeah, I don't know. It's still going to be very popular, and there might be a huge outcry again. And I think that they should compromise and do a Modern Pro Tour every 2 years with the release of Modern Masters. Every time they release a Modern Masters, that's when they should release a Modern Pro Tour. Because then they can justify, they can sell their sets, and that's really what it's all about. Exposure sells a lot of packs and product. And so these Pro Tours of Standard, which are currently having a lot of cards in them, of course, they're all available through purchasing booster packs, are going to be bought. And whereas a Modern tournament, people are going to buy singles, and it doesn't. The secondary market does have an impact on the primary market. But Wizards, I don't know. Wizards just a lot of times doesn't seem like they're the most intelligent company when it comes to like the marketing their products and whatnot. But overall, I think it's a bad news for the game. But hopefully they'll be willing to do a compromise. I'd love to see a Pro Tour Modern at the release. I'd love to see a Pro Tour Legacy at the release of the Eternal Masters. But anyway, that I'm not on the board of Wizards of the Coast, and my decision means absolutely nothing to, or my opinions mean absolutely nothing to them. So where do we go from here? I'm not quite sure. I'm going to continue to still play Modern. I don't think it's anywhere near a solved format. It never has really been a solved format. The Modern, when it's healthy, is a self-policing metagame, which means like when Infect becomes big, then the decks that beat out. And unless there has been this like horribly overpowered strategy like when Treasure Cruise or when the Eldrazi were printed, you can even say that during Twin times, Twin was just a consistent deck. People just played it because of how well it matched up versus the field. So if you're going to go to where you have to play, what is it, 8 games of Standard or 8 games of Constructed to make it to the top 8, so 8 games of Limited and 8 games, you're going to want to play a deck that is consistent, that has a good matchup versus almost everything, and or at least a 50-50 matchup, and that way you can minimize the variance and maximize your skill level. And that's why a lot of pros like gravitated towards Twin. And even now that I think Twin's okay now that we're starting to see like Jund play the role that Twin did, being able to stop like some of these crazy decks like the Gora's Vengeance type decks and all these like really, really hyper, like very, very focused combo decks that have no win conditions outside their combo. They're starting to be farmed away by like Lantern Control and Jund. But anywho, yeah, so I think that the format's very healthy right now. You can run a very diverse amount of decks, and I'd love to see another Pro Tour with Modern. So let's just go back to the price list here. Let's go back to the movers and shakers for this week. Of course, like Standard, we're going to start seeing a few prices here and there go up, but it's going to start to flatten out, and all of the Origins and Dragon's Dark here are going to start to go down. Modern, I think, is still interesting. We've got like cards every once in a while. What is Puka's Mischief? At the beginning of your upkeep, you may exchange control of target permanent control with a target non-land permanent. What are they using this in? Some deck that 4-color enchantments. All right, so someone is running Puka's Mischief to give them what? It's just value exchanging? Doesn't seem like they're trying to give him like a bad card here. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. This is just an Enduring Ideal deck. But I was wondering why this spiked up. Huh. Sometimes Modern is just so weird because just the casual and the commander and just fringe-based decks will start to outstrip the supply. And then what happens on like TCG and eBay is everyone tries to match the price, and as soon as all those match prices are gone, then it leaves you like this like one crazy price that is like $10 above the normal, and then it does that little weird spike. But yeah, it looks like, what is Kokosho going crazy for? It's just been steadily going up. Yeah, this is a commander card, right? I mean, I use it in one of my commander decks, but yeah, that's a pretty significant increase from its Modern Masters days. Anywho, I think we'll keep an eye on Modern. Right now, Jund's the big bad boy on a campus. That's like all I play on MTGO is Jund. Like it's every other game is Jund, and I think it's really like a lot of the stats right now on this metagame. Let's go back over the metagame for Modern. I think are leftover decks with, yeah, look, Jund, tons of Jund. And this was when the Eldrazi were around. This was like Jund was one of the lowest played decks, and now it's what they're saying 6%. But look how healthy Modern is. 7%, 6%, 5%, 5%. This is a very, very healthy Modern format. Anyway, let me know what you think about this. I know I've been rambling all over the place for over 25 minutes of rambles. I think I was going to talk about something else, but I'll show you some deck lists I'm working on, and we'll keep an eye out for other cards. There was one card I thought you should spec into. There was a Devastation Tides, or Devastation Summonings? Devastating Summonings. And I tried it out. Devastating Summons. I tried it out in Zoo, and this card was phenomenal in Zoo. So as additional cost to cast Devastating Summon, sacrifice X lands, and put 2 XX red elemental creatures, this card was so good with the Reckless Bushwhacker and the other Bushwhacker. So just keep your eye on this card. It could spike up that now some Zoo decks are starting to run it, and some of these other base decks are starting to run it. I've seen all the way up to a 3 of in certain decks. It also has some pretty good synergy with like Burning Tree Emissary, and so you can cast Burning Tree Emissary into a 2-drop. So you go first turn like Experiment 1, and then second turn you can drop something else, evolve the Experiment 1 off the Burning Tree Emissary in a Wild Nikado, for example, and then kill both your Devastating Summonings or both your lands, and you have 4 more power on board, and they're just lethal. I mean, that's kind of like an all-in strategy, but it's just, it really helps you out with one of those times you get mana flooded. I've been really liking it in the deck. Anyway, that's just one of the things I think you should check out. Go and look and see if you have any Muddle the Mixtures. I don't think the price can hold it. $10 common is obscene. There's no way that can hold its price. And then it's one of those cards that I'm surprised hasn't been reprinted in a Commander deck, and I think soon will get printed. It used to be a Commander staple. It's just a tutor. It's a tutor for any 2-drop in your deck. I've used it in other decks to go grab some of my more broken base cards. I used it in like a Hakon deck to go grab the Ash of the Fallen, and it could go grab a number of different 2-drops that I needed to like assemble my combos. Anyway, we're way over time here. This is Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com. Thanks for watching.